Sandra, a stunning young woman in her 20s, lived a life many only dreamed of. Her world changed the day she married Chief Douglas, a man of immense wealth and unshakable influence. He was powerful, respected, and known for his extravagant generosity. To Sandra, he was more than a husband. He was the key to a luxurious new life. Chief Douglas spared no expense in spoiling his wife. He bought her glittering jewelry, designer shoes, and a sleek, exotic car. Sandra became a fixture in the city's elite social circles. Her days filled with shopping at exclusive boutiques and evenings spent in upscale restaurants tasting the finest cuisine. She wore her wealth like a second skin, confident and radiant in the spotlight. But beneath the designer clothes and the glittering diamonds, one sunny afternoon, she found herself alone at her favorite restaurant, a chic spot overlooking the city skyline. As she sipped a glass of fine red wine and waited for her meal, a man she didn't know approached and slid into the seat beside her. He was tall, sharply dressed, and carried an air of quiet confidence. Startled, Sandra turned to him. "Who are you?" she asked, a hint of caution in her voice. He leaned back in his seat, a slight smirk playing on his lips. "Some things," he said calmly, "are better not known." Sandra narrowed her eyes. Her voice rose, louder now though slightly shaky. "I asked you, who are you?" The man met her gaze without flinching. "I'm Alex," he said simply. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone sharp. Alex tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Tell me, Sandra, do you really know your husband?" She froze. Her fingers gripped the edge of the table, but she said nothing. He leaned in, lowering his voice, yet it carried weight. "You see, I always wonder how easily women these days get swept away by money and glitter, and forget what really matters." Sandra slowly raised her head. Her heart pounded, an invisible grip of fear tightening in her chest. Alex smiled faintly, then asked again, "Do you really know your husband?" This time, Sandra's fear turned to anger. She forced a bitter smile and snapped, "You said it yourself, some things are better not known." Sandra's chest tightened. She had heard enough. "I think you should leave," she said firmly, her voice steadier now but her hands still trembling beneath the table. Alex didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a sleek black card, and placed it gently on the table in front of her. "If you ever want to talk," he said, his tone calm and deliberate, "call me." With that, he stood, adjusted his cufflinks, and walked away, leaving behind only the card, the questions he'd stirred, and a silence heavy with unspoken truths. Sandra stared at the card, her heart pounding louder than the soft music in the restaurant. Sandra sat frozen for a moment, her eyes fixed on the card Alex had left behind. His question echoed in her mind. "Do you really know your husband?" The truth was unsettling, she didn't. Not really. She knew Chief Douglas as a powerful, wealthy businessman. He provided everything she wanted, but he rarely spoke about his past, his business dealings, or the people he met behind closed doors. Their relationship had always been about appearances and comfort, not deep conversation. Now, the cracks in that perfect image had begun to show. For the first time, Sandra realized how little she truly knew about the man she lived with. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept turning Alex's words over in her mind. Still, pride and fear held her back. She didn't question her husband, didn't ask him anything. But the curiosity had already taken root. And deep inside, a quiet urgency was growing. At the break of dawn, the mansion was already humming with quiet activity. In the garage, Abel, one of the estate's senior security guards, stood beside Sandra's polished black SUV. He was trusted, loyal, and had been assigned to guard the main house for over 3 years. Over time, he had become a familiar face to Sandra, someone she greeted daily, someone who always seemed to be watching more than he said. As she stepped outside, dressed elegantly as always, Abel straightened up and offered a respectful salute. "Good morning, Ma," he said with a smile. "Your car is clean, serviced, and ready." Sandra paused, her eyes studying his face. She hesitated for a moment, then spoke softly. Abel, can I ask you something? Of course, Ma, he said, his tone instantly serious. She glanced around, lowered her voice. Tell me everything you know about Chief's business. The truth. Not what everyone else says. Abel's expression shifted. He looked down, hesitant. Madam, I only know what you know. Chief is a businessman. He travels often, attends big meetings, always moving with important people. Sandra narrowed her eyes. That's it. Yes, Ma. He owns companies, has properties, big contracts with the government. That's all I know. But Sandra could tell he was holding something back. Still, he bowed respectfully and added, It's not my place to question Olga's affairs, Ma. She didn't press further, but as she slipped into the back seat of the SUV, the feeling in her chest remained. The hollow kind that came when your instincts screamed louder than the answers you were given. That night, after Chief Douglas had fallen asleep, Sandra lay wide awake beside him, her thoughts restless. Something about Alex's words, and Abel's hesitation, kept pulling at her like a loose thread. Driven by suspicion and a feeling she could no longer ignore, she quietly reached for Chief's phone on the bedside table. Her hands trembled as she unlocked it using the password she had memorized long ago but never dared to use. What she found shattered her. Messages, photos, names she didn't recognize, women. Some recent, some stretching back months. All evidence that Chief had been unfaithful, regularly and without remorse. Her chest tightened with fury and betrayal. The man who gave her the world had given parts of himself to others without a second thought. Blinded by rage and confusion, Sandra grabbed her phone and dialed the only person who had dared to question the truth behind her life, Alex. He answered after a few rings. I found out, she said coldly. Is this what you were talking about? Chief's women. His cheating. There was a pause on the other end. Then a chuckle. No, Alex said. His voice calm and slightly amused. I'm not surprised, though. That's the least of it. Sandra's stomach twisted. What do you mean? You should ask yourself, Sandra, Alex said, his voice lowering. What kind of business can buy this much silence? Her heart began to race. Before she could ask more, he ended the call. And for the first time the mansion felt like a trap. The morning sun filtered through the tall glass windows of the mansion, casting golden light across the marble floors. But there was nothing warm about the atmosphere in the dining room. Sandra sat silently at the head of the long table, her face unreadable as Chief Douglas entered, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt. He greeted her casually, unaware of the storm that had already begun to brew. I saw your messages, she said quietly. Chief froze mid-step. For a brief moment, surprise flickered in his eyes, but it vanished just as quickly, replaced by something colder. He straightened his shoulders and walked to the table. You went through my phone, he asked, his voice dangerously calm. Sandra stood up. You've been cheating on me. With more than one woman. You lied to me. For a moment he said nothing. Then his voice exploded across the room. What gave you the right to touch my phone? He shouted, slamming his hand down on the table. Who do you think you are? Sandra flinched but stood her ground. Her heart raced, but the pain in her chest burned hotter than her fear. You betrayed me, she said, voice trembling. You've been living a lie. Chief's face twisted with anger. Don't you ever go through my things again. If you want to enjoy this life, know your place. He turned away, seething. And just like that, the man she once saw as a provider now looked like a stranger. The days after the confrontation passed in uneasy silence. Sandra moved through the mansion like a ghost, her mind racing with doubt, betrayal, and the echo of Alex's words. That's the least of it. Everything began to feel off. Too quiet. Too controlled. That night, the air was heavy and still. Sandra lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Chief Douglas had come in late and barely said a word before slipping under the covers. But now he was gone. She reached out instinctively to his side of the bed, and her hand met only cold sheets. Then she heard it. Noise. Soft but distinct. Movement somewhere in the mansion. It wasn't the first time she had heard strange sounds at night, but she had always brushed them off. This time something felt different. Her instincts screamed that she couldn't ignore it. Curious and afraid, Sandra tiptoed toward the window. When she gently parted the curtain and peered outside, her breath caught in her throat. A black bus was parked inside the compound, an unfamiliar vehicle she'd never seen before. And the outdoor lights had been switched off. Fear gripped her like a cold hand around her throat. Her heart pounded. The mansion, always well lit and secure, now looked like the setting of a secret no one was meant to see. She pressed herself against the wall, struggling to stay calm. Her mind raced with questions. What's happening? Who are they? Where is Chief? And just then she heard footsteps. Inside the house. It was Chief. Sandra barely had time to step away from the window before the door creaked open. She hurried back to bed and slipped under the covers, pretending to be asleep. Her heart pounded as she felt him walk past her, then slide back into bed without a word. He didn't know she had seen anything. The next morning, over breakfast, Sandra kept her voice calm as she turned to Abel. "Abel," she said softly, "did anything unusual happen here last night?" Abel, standing by the door as usual, kept his eyes forward. "No, Ma. Everything was normal." She studied him. His voice was steady, rehearsed. The same answer always. Later that day, a sleek black car pulled into the compound. Chief's longtime friend, Mr. Martins, stepped out, dressed in a fine gray suit, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses. He was one of Chief's inner circle. Quiet, calculating, and rarely seen. Sandra watched from the balcony as he and Chief made their way to the private lounge at the back of the mansion. She waited a few minutes, then moved quietly down the hallway, stopping just outside the slightly open door. Their voices were low, but not low enough. She leaned closer, careful not to make a sound. "We need to be more careful," Mr. Martins was saying. "I know," Chief replied. Sandra's eyes widened as she heard them repeat one phrase again and again. "The girls, the girls." The words echoed in her ears. "Who are the girls?" she asked herself, panic rising in her chest. She strained to hear more, but the rest of the conversation had faded, swallowed by deliberate whispers. That night the question haunted her. Who are the girls? And what were Chief and Mr. Martins hiding? The next day, Sandra couldn't shake the feeling that something was hidden, something deeper than what she had seen or heard. With Chief away on one of his frequent outings and most of the staff busy, she decided to explore the estate. Until now, she had restricted herself to the mansion and its immediate surroundings, comfortable in the lavish bubble she'd been placed in. But that morning, she stepped beyond the well-manicured gardens, past the tall hedges and paved paths, walking into the more forgotten parts of the property. To her surprise, the estate stretched on and on. Trees lined the back, tall and quiet, and the further she went, the more distant the mansion became, almost like a dream fading behind her. Then she saw it. Half hidden by vines and shadows, nestled deep within the estate, stood a small, worn-down structure. The walls were concrete, old and colorless, with no windows, only a heavy-looking door bolted shut. It looked secret, like something meant to be forgotten. She stepped closer, heart racing. She raised her hand and knocked lightly once. Nothing. She tried again, raising her hand for a second knock, when suddenly a strong hand grabbed her wrist from behind. "Stop!" a sharp voice commanded. Her heart skipped. She turned slowly, and saw one of Chief's security guards. Her chest tightened. "Why is he here? What's going on?" "I was just bored," she managed to say, trying to sound calm. "So I decided to take a stroll." "What is that?" she asked, pointing at the strange structure. "It's nothing," the guard said firmly. "You have to return to the mansion now. Chief will soon be back. You don't have to be here. Chief will not like it." Before she could reply, another figure appeared, Abel. He looked stunned to see her there. "Madam, what are you doing?" Take her back to the mansion, the guard ordered. Without another word, Abel walked her to one of the parked estate cars and drove her home in silence. Sandra sat quietly in the back seat, her mind spiraling. What was that place? And why are they so afraid of me finding out?